Hey, how's it going? My name is Wes. Welcome to the second lesson of this Spanish course. If you are watching this video, then I suggest you already watched lesson number 1. If you didn't, make sure to watch lesson 1 before you move on to lesson 2 and so forth. Alright, so the topic of today's lesson is called introductions. And this lesson is quite big, so I've divided this lesson into 2 different parts. So today we will start with part 1. And as you can see, this lesson is a blue lesson, and blue lessons are vocabulary lessons. So in these blue vocabulary lessons, you will learn important words and phrases that you can add to your vocabulary. Because languages in general consist of 2 different things. They either consist of grammar and vocabulary. And if you add those together, then you form what's called the language. So in later lessons, we will look at grammar, but for now, I want you to focus on vocabulary first. Alright, so in today's lesson, we will go over about 20 words that we will learn. And what's important for you to know is that you can either learn all of the 20 words or phrases that we will go over today, or you can only choose to learn the words that you want to and that you think that are best for your language learning journey. At the end of this lesson, I will provide you with a PDF file that you can download, which has all of the words and phrases that we went over today also. Alright, so today's lesson, introductions, it's a blue vocabulary lesson. Let's get into the first word that we will learn. Now the first word that we learn is actually the same word that we learned in lesson number 1, which is
Hola. Hola.
So again, hola is with a soft H. So we say hola, not hola, but hola. Alright, let's move on to the second word, which is bienvenidos.
Bienvenidos. Bienvenidos.
This means welcome. And again, like I said in the previous lesson, here we also see these inverted exclamation marks. Alright, the next word is
Buenos días. Buenos días.
This means good morning in Spanish. And buenos is with an O, so buenos, O-S at the end.
Buenos días.
Alright, the next word that we will learn is buenas tardes. So with an A-S, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Alright, so the next word is buenas noches. Again, buenas with an A-S.
Buenas noches. Buenas noches.
So only if we say good morning, buenos días, we use OS. For the buenas tardes and buenas noches, we use AS. So buenas noches, good night. So if it's early in the morning or anywhere until 12 in the afternoon, we say
Buenos días.
Then from 12 to around, I'm not sure, I think 6 or so. I don't know when the evening starts for you. For me, usually around 6 o'clock. We say
Buenas tardes.
But in Spanish, you can actually use buenas tardes also for when it's a bit later in the evening. There's not really a strict rule of when you use buenas tardes and buenas noches. But noches, buenas noches, is usually really used when it's really late. So let's say that you went out for dinner somewhere and it's 11 or 12, then you can say buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Alright, so let's move on to the 6th phrase, which is
Encantado de conocerte. Encantado de conocerte.
Which means pleasure to meet you. So if you meet someone new, you can use this phrase to say, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Encantado de conocerte.
The first word, encantado, can also just be used by itself. So you don't need to say encantado de conocerte. If it's a bit too long for you and too difficult, you can also just say
Encantado. Encantado.
Which also means pleasure to meet you. And another thing to notice here is that, and I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but is that encantado ends with an O. And this is the first big problem that we run into when we learn Spanish, which is that in the Spanish language, we always refer to adjectives as being either masculine or feminine. And in the English language, we don't have this. If you're a bit confused about what I'm saying right now, do not worry. We will get to this in one of the next lessons. But for now, just know that if you are a man like me, I will say encantado. But if you're a woman and you're learning, then you can say encantada.
Encantado. Encantada.
So depending on if we are masculine or feminine, we use masculine or feminine words. So encantado is for masculine and encantada is for feminine. Alright, let's move on. So besides encantado de conocerte or encantado, we can also say mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto. Mucho gusto.
You might have heard this phrase before. This means nice to meet you.
Mucho gusto.
Alright, so now imagine you meet someone and they say encantado. Then here is a very helpful word that you can use to say likewise, which is igualmente.
Igualmente. Igualmente.
And so basically you're saying it's nice to meet you too. Alright, so then after you said it's nice to meet you, you might want to introduce yourself. And there are different ways to say your name, but the one that I recommend you to learn is me llamo.
Me llamo. Me llamo.
And then state your name. So for me, Wes, me llamo Wes. Me llamo Wes. So my name is Wes. Now, you might notice that there's two L's in llamo. And I'm not saying lamo, I'm saying llamo. This is because every time in Spanish we see a double L next to each other, instead of saying L, we say Y. And in the next lesson, I think we will go over the alphabet and I will explain that to you again. So just learn, every time you see a double L, you say Y. And you don't pronounce the L, you switch the two L's to Y. So, me llamo Wes. Alright, so then after we say what our name is, we might want to ask the other person, what is your name? And the way we do that is by saying, ¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas?
And then the other person is most likely to say, me llamo, and then add their name. Alright, so I think we're about halfway through this lesson already. So right now we can say hello, nice to meet you. What is your name? My name is this, which is pretty helpful if you meet someone new. Oftentimes in these online Spanish courses, they will start with the alphabet and things like that. And it always bothered me a bit because I think it's very important right from the start to learn how to speak to people with phrases and words that you will actually use. So what I tried to do is to come up with these very helpful words and phrases right from the beginning, so that even if you watch just these two lessons, you can already go and speak to a Spanish person. Of course, you cannot have a conversation or anything, but at least you can introduce yourself, tell them your name, and ask them what their name is and how they are doing. So that was very important for me while building this course, to make it practical so that you can actually go into the real world and start talking to people. Alright, let's move on to the next phrase, which is actually one that we already learned in a previous lesson, which is ¿Cómo estás?
¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás?
And then the next one we actually already also learned, and I included these because this lesson is called Introductions, so I thought it would be helpful to include these into this lesson also. So another way of saying how is it going or how are you is
¿Qué tal? ¿Qué tal?
And then we learned to say good, thank you, I think in the previous lesson, which was
Bien, gracias.
But we can also say I'm very good, which is estoy muy bien.
Estoy muy bien. Estoy muy bien.
Or I'm good, which is estoy bien.
Estoy bien. Estoy bien.
Estoy means I am, bien, good, and then we can add muy, which is very. So estoy muy bien. I'm very good. And then probably we want to ask the other person, so what about you? How are you doing? And the way we do this is by saying
¿Y tú? ¿Y tú?
Or if we are talking to an older person or someone that we show our respect to, we use usted, which is more of a formal way of saying you.
¿Y usted? ¿Y usted?
So, y tú for a friend or someone that's the same age that we don't really need to speak formally to, or y usted for more formal situations. Alright, next one is
Estoy aprendiendo español. Estoy aprendiendo español.
Again, we have this weird ñ at the end of español, so not español, español. So estoy, like we saw in the previous, one of the previous phrases, is I am. Aprendiendo means learning. So I am learning Spanish. Estoy aprendiendo español. And if you state that you are learning Spanish, then people usually get very excited and they want to help you, and they will try to speak a bit slower and pronounce things more accurately, and that will help you to hopefully understand what they are saying a bit better. So this is a very helpful phrase that you can use in everyday life also.
Estoy aprendiendo español.
Alright, so then let's move on to the 4 last words or phrases that I want to go over today. So the first one is one that we already saw in the last lesson also, which is
Hasta luego. Hasta luego.
see you later. Now, we can also say see you soon, which is hasta pronto. So pronto is soon.
Hasta pronto. Hasta pronto.
Again, hasta with the soft H. So hasta pronto. See you soon. Choose whichever one of these you want to learn. If you feel like you're not really gonna use see you soon often, then don't learn it. It doesn't hurt to learn it, but I could imagine that right now you're looking at about 20 words. So you might want to make a selection of the words that you will use and the ones that you won't. So yeah, that's totally up to you. Then the next one you can use is hasta mañana. And mañana means tomorrow. So see you tomorrow. Hasta mañana.
Hasta mañana. Hasta mañana.
And then the last phrase that we will learn in this vocabulary lesson is
Nos vemos. Nos vemos.
which means we see each other. So nos vemos, hasta mañana, hasta pronto, and hasta luego. Or, like we learned in the previous lesson, adios. Alright, and that's actually it for this vocabulary lesson. I hope that you got something out of this. I could imagine that you're maybe a bit overwhelmed because we went over these 20 words quite rapidly. And that's why I've created this PDF file that you can download on my website for free, which is SpanishWithWes.com. I'll provide a link with the exact URL in the description, so you can just click on that and be directed to the right page. Now, if you want to learn and memorize these words and phrases of this lesson, then I actually recommend using a technique called using flashcards. And I'll make a separate video, which I will put in between this lesson and the next lesson, which explains what flashcards are and how they work and how you can use them to memorize certain words and phrases. Alright, so that's it for this first vocabulary lesson. Again, I hope it was helpful to you. The reason why I'm making this course is because I genuinely want to help other people learn Spanish, and so I really hope that you get something out of this. Alright, that's it for this lesson. Muchas gracias, and I hope to see you in lesson number 3 already, in which we will go over the alphabet. Alright, I'm excited. See you in the next one. Hasta luego.